So social media, I think that we shouldn't just see the negative part. There are certainly good parts. I mean, like you and I connected, right, over social media, right?
Yes, of
course. And then I connect with my secondary one. This will be my 7th grade school mates, right? And we have fun just through WhatsApp group. And there are many such school reunion groups around. And then in my case, on issues like climate change, there's a group addressing that, right? The social media has a purpose in getting people connected. And also actually, there's been already research showing that actually the internet, and in particular social media, is actually most powerful, not even for communication, but for mobilizing resources. So you think about what it can do to mobilize resources. This is fantastic. Social media is fantastic, right? I can think of Indonesia, a crisis, an earthquake, whatever, right? Mobilize resources using social media. Very powerful. So I think that it has changed the way we communicate already, because now we can reach people all over the world. I sort of use social media in fighting the haze from Indonesia. Yeah, so form a group to boycott the companies you are contributing to the haze. Yeah. So there are many good things about social media. Yeah. So I see it, the benefits. So I think it will continue, but yes, we should try and contain the downside.
Because the internet is such a primarily user-generated platform, it's very open, right? And that fosters creativity and innovation, as you all know. So I think I'm never, although I mean I did a lot of research in policy and regulation and legislation for that kind of thing. I never believe in the power of control by legal sanctions or legislation. I think it's best to enable people to make informed choices. They should be able to make informed choices. If they have the information, they can decide, informatively that, what's the best choice for them. So you may call it digital literacy, you may call it capacity building, whatever that is. But I think whatever means to empower the users, to make informed choices, I think that's the best. So I mean, when we talk about users, we're talking about a broad base, right? We're talking about because now digital users could be as young as 2 years old, right? And they could be as old as 80 or 90 years old, right? So programs in empowering and enhancing the capacity and to make informed choices would need to be understanding of different contexts as well. Like you can't use the same program or campaign or whatever for younger people and older people. It has to be catered. When I talk about sharing and sort of making disinformation and fake news spread further, a lot of times I don't think it's the youth. It's more the older people who are not so keen on using social media, right? Because if you look at the older people, like my parents are like in the 80s and 70s. I mean, they live in a very trusting. They lived, in the past, their context, in a very trusting environment, and they grew up with mainstream media, which has a long process of verifying and fact checking and that kind of thing. So when they get something online messages on messaging apps and that kind of thing, they tend to share because they trust that if it's not true, why people put it out there? I ask them, why did you share it? There's no source, right? I mean, for me, it's like you have to check the source, and you have to check the URL, I mean, it's like a common sense to me, right? And this a lot of times is chat app, right? So it's their circle of friends. So if their circle of friends, someone they trust, someone they believe, who are their friends, send it to them. It ought to be true, right? So it's like, it's not the content per se, but it's who the sender of content that made it seem trustworthy or something. Yeah. Right. But on the other hand, my son, who is probably digital native, right? Because he's 15, he grew up using the internet since he was young. He never believed anything everything is a hoax to him. And it's the opposite, the entire opposite, because my son would be like, oh, how could you believe anything on the internet? You know, so this is an extreme distrust. You know, you go from like extreme trust to extreme distrust. Yeah. So I think it's really important that, you know, we shed light on this, you know, for maybe someone like me in the middle, you know, so we know how to fine tune things, but those who are too trusting or who are too distrusting, you know, how are you going to have a harmonious, not harmonious, you're going to have a balanced society, right? Yeah.
There is a saying, right? Birds of a feather flock together. I think that's largely true, not just in the internet, anywhere. People, I mean, as a human being, you like to be near people who affirm your views, who affirm your world views, who affirm your way of thinking, of what you think is right and what you think is wrong, of what you think is moral and what you think is not. That is a human nature. So I think that the internet is no different. People will try to find comfort in people who in a group or a community where they think that who share the same views, share the same opinions, have the same moral values, and so on and so forth. So it's not unexpected for that to happen, right? How do the algorithms? How are they written? You know, and what you see on your news feed, does it really reflect the views on the ground, you know, or is it just the view of a handful of people, you know? So all that is a bit troublesome, which is why I think people who are in the internet, it's also important for them to interact in the real world to real people. Sometimes it's important to put your phone down or to put your laptop down and to go out and meet people on the street and talk to them. And so the internet cannot be divorced from the real world. You know, if someone is so immersed, or one group is so immersed in the internet itself and divorced from the real world, then your truth or what you believe to be truth can be skewed.